Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. We sift through, well, a lot of information to bring you the critical insights. Today, we're diving deep into the intricate world of ethics. We're guided by a really compelling audio session that lays out some fundamental questions. Our mission, to give you a clear understanding of what ethics is, maybe what it isn't, and how these ideas, ripple through everything. Global policy, our daily choices, prepare for some thought-provoking stuff, maybe some unexpected connections.
Absolutely. We'll be your navigators, helping you distinguish these crucial ethical ideas and see how they actually apply in the real world.
We want to challenge some common assumptions, explore those subtle nuances that often get glossed over.
Right, because many people think ethics is just, simple right versus wrong. But the material we looked at, it goes deeper into the academic heart, really. It defines it as the systematic study of human action from the perspective of its rightness or wrongness. It's not just about what is, but fundamentally what ought to be. And what's fascinating is how practical that definition becomes, almost immediately. Take the example from our source material. The India-Pakistan cross-border counterterrorism strikes. The analysis suggests India's actions, targeting terror camps specifically, without harming civilians, were ethically rightful. Why? Because they aim to eliminate a threat using proportional and just means.
That idea of proportional means. It leaves us straight to a cornerstone principle, doesn't it? Means versus ends. India's end was neutralizing terrorists. The means were proportional, ethical as the source sees it. But hypothetically, if they targeted civilian areas for the same goal, well, that flips entirely. Unethical action. Wrongful means. So the insight isn't just the outcome, it's the whole moral calculus getting there. It forces you to ask, do good goals ever justify bad paths?
And that brings up this tension. Yeah, what are your rights versus doing the right thing? Potter Stewart, the American jurist, he touched on this. There's a difference between what you can legally do and what's simply the right thing to do. Our material uses this lens too. India was within its rights to act, sure, but it also pursued arguably the right ethical path through restraint and precision.
And it's not just nations, right? The Supreme Court example in the source shows it applies to you personally. You have the right to free expression, fundamental. But using it ethically means thinking about others' rights too, not deliberately violating them. It's a sentiment you see everywhere. Do not do unto others in Christianity.
Or the Sanskrit counterpart from the Mahabharata, Atmani Partikulani Parishramna Samachar. Treat others as you would want to be treated, essentially.
Exactly. Different cultures, same core idea.
And to go even deeper, our readings mention Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Now, that's a definition you don't hear every day. He frames ethics as the study of ideal human character. The whole point. Understand moral principles so you can live a virtuous, happy life. It's about who you become.
Okay, so we've got the theory down. But how does this play out when things get real? When reputations or even lives are on the line? Our material gives some really compelling real-world examples, case studies that make these ideas tangible.
Yes, take the discussion around pan masala ads. The sources contrast cricketers who did those ads with figures like, say, Virat Kohli or Sachin Tendulkar, who apparently turned down big money for similar endorsements. It starkly highlights a difference, doesn't it, between perhaps being driven by ethical principles, thinking about rightful means or societal impact, versus actions that, okay, they might be legal, but ethically questionable under a wider lens.
Or journalism. That's another big one in the source. It points to TRP-driven sensationalism, fake news, what was seen from some Pakistani media outlets during those terror strikes we mentioned, and contrast that with ethical reporting, citing Indian journalists like Aditya Raj Kaul, Shiv Arora, Siddhant Sibal, whose work, the source suggests, avoided propaganda. It's not just one incident. It shows how these choices have real consequences.
Definitely. And look at the construction sector. Tragically, we see what happens when ethics get sidelined. The Sukyara tunnel collapse in India, or issues with the SLBC tunnel. These examples show what can happen when engineers maybe rush things, cut corners on safety assessments, materials, ignore warning signs like cracks. These aren't just mistakes. They're often cases of wrongful action with disastrous results. It underlines the heavy moral weight in professional roles.
But ethics isn't always straightforward, is it? Sometimes it's genuinely tricky. Our source gets into that too. The dilemma is where there's no easy answer. It mentions the classic trolley problem, the Heinz dilemma, not just as abstract puzzles, but as tools forcing us to grapple with trade-offs with context.
And a really relevant one, especially for you listening, might be the whistleblower dilemma. Imagine you're a public servant. You find serious corruption. You're reported up the chain, but your boss shuts you down. What do? Uphold your integrity, risk your job, your family's security, or stay quiet? That's a tough, real-world ethical conflict. Personal well-being versus moral duty.
Yeah, that's a heavy one. It reminds me of that anecdote from the sources about Lord Krishna and Kaliyanag, the serpent. Instead of just killing it, Krishna drives it away. It wasn't just being merciful, it shows maybe an understanding of a proportionate solution. Rightful means to free Vrindavan, but preserving life where possible. It's a powerful picture of ethical action.
A very powerful illustration.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about what ethics is. Now let's flip that. What is ethics not? Because the sources are very clear. It's way more than just your gut feeling.
Exactly. If ethics was just feelings, well, you'd have chaos, right?
Yeah.
Pure subjectivity. There has to be some kind of objective standard we can refer to. This idea of moral intuition versus moral reasoning captures it well. Your intuition might scream stealing is wrong, but reason, looking at the Heinz dilemma stealing to save a life, might lead you to a more nuanced ethical view.
It's also not just religion. That's a key distinction. Religions provide vital moral codes, absolutely, but ethics as a field, it evolves. Think about Section 377 in India, criminalizing same-sex acts for years. What was seen as unjust yesterday, like denying LGBTQ plus rights, is increasingly seen as just today as society understands more. If religious doctrine stays fixed while ethics moves on, they can diverge.
That also connects to law, doesn't it? What's legal isn't always ethical. The material makes us think about things like abortion, capital punishment. Legal in many places, sure, but taking a life. Ethically problematic for many because of the sanctity of life principle. And conversely, something illegal can be ethical. Think of the civil disobedience movement against the British. Or whistleblowers like Snowden or Assange. They broke laws, but arguably exposed moral issues.
So what's the relationship between law and ethics then? The sources give us three really potent maxims to chew on. 1, law sets the minimum standard of human behavior, while ethics sets the maximum standard.
That's a great one.
2, good people do not need law, but bad people will always find their way around law. Yeah.
And 3, a society cannot be made strong only by making strong laws, but by making people of good character.
Powerful statements. Law gives us the floor, ethics gives us the ceiling, maybe.
Exactly. Law is the guardrail, ethics is the aspiration.
And critically, ethics is not just what's socially acceptable at a given time. Practices like sati, the purdah system. They were accepted in parts of society once. Were they ethical? Clearly not by today's standards, and arguably not even then by universal principles. Challenging those norms is how societies evolve ethically. Think about women's rights movements everywhere, Saudi Arabia included.
And lastly, simple personal likes and dislikes. They don't define ethics either. You might like driving fast, but stopping at a red light. That's an ethical and legal duty beyond personal preference.
Right. Or think about things like cyberbullying or ragging. Someone might like doing it, get a thrill from it, but it's fundamentally unethical behavior, full stop.
Okay, so bringing it all together, what's the essence of ethics, the core idea? Our material introduces a really interesting distinction here. Absolute versus relative ethics. Right. Absolute ethics says some things are just plain right or wrong, always, everywhere, like killing is wrong. It pushes for clear accountability, objectivity. But relative ethics says, well, context matters. Killing a terrorist to save hundreds of lives. Maybe that is ethically right in that specific situation, allows for subjectivity, nuance, maybe better judgment in complex cases.
And this ties into societal evolution, as the source suggests. In completely evolved societies, the source mentions Scandinavian countries as an example, ethics might lean more towards the absolute, strong consensus, fewer exceptions. But in societies still evolving, like India perhaps, relative ethics plays a bigger role. Norms are shifting, understanding is growing, like with LGBTQ plus rights. It's more dynamic.
There's a great case study in the source material illustrating this. A destitute woman needs scheme benefits, but lacks the proper documents. An officer using absolute ethics might just say, no, rules are rules. Very rigid. But relative ethics allows the officer to consider her desperate situation. Yes, it introduces subjectivity, but it likely leads to a more compassionate, arguably more ethical outcome. It shows that tension between the rule and the spirit.
So given all this complexity, what actually determines if an action is ethical? What shapes our choices? The sources break this down really well.
First up, individual factors. Your own morals, your values, your education, your intentions, even past experiences. They all feed into it. The source material prompts reflection on figures like Osama bin Laden, educated, yes, but driven by harmful intentions and a specific worldview. It shows how individual factors can lead down dark paths.
And a huge individual factor is conscience. The source describes it as your inner moral compass. that little voice, that inner light telling you right from wrong. It's guiding your choices, hopefully.
But it's not just about the individual in isolation, is it? Then you have situational factors. Even if you're a morally strong person, external pressures can sway you. Societal expectations, peer pressure, weak laws, maybe a corrupt workplace culture. You might find yourself compromising that inner conscience just to fit in, or maybe even to survive professionally.
And beyond you and the immediate situation, there are these broader other factors at play, massive influences.
Like culture, huge impact.
Yeah.
Is premarital sex okay? Alcohol. Different cultures have vastly different ethical takes. Religion obviously dictates behavior for many, provides strong ethical frameworks, and formal codes of conduct. Think civil servants. The source mentions they might even need permission to buy a phone over a certain price. It's about legally defining acceptable conduct.
Timing is another one. What was unethical yesterday, certain LGBTQ plus issues again might be accepted today as society learns and evolves, and the simple existence or lack of laws matters. Cryptocurrency in India, for example, might sit in a gray area. Not illegal, perhaps, but ethically debated.
And finally, foundational things. Your education and upbringing. There's an example in the source about a top-scoring student in UP who wasn't fazed by online trolls because of her peaceful upbringing. It shows how deep these roots go in building ethical resilience. And, of course, the constant pressure to conform, that can lead people to compromise, maybe start smoking, just to be part of the group, even if they know it's not right for them.
Wow. What a deep dive into ethics today. Seriously. We've gone from core definitions, seen it in action with some powerful examples, cleared up what it isn't, explored absolute versus relative ethics, all the way to the factors determining our choices.
Yeah. And if you connect all those dots, it's clear ethics isn't static at all. It's dynamic. It's evolving. It constantly challenges us to look at our actions, not just based on laws or what everyone else is doing, but against, well, a deeper moral compass.
So the big question then, what does this all mean for you listening? As you go through your own life, your career, think about it. How often do you make choices based on just feelings, or what's legal, or what's socially okay, versus what you genuinely believe is the right thing to do, considering all these complexities we've talked about?
It really raises a crucial question for all of us, doesn't it? In this increasingly complex world, how do we cultivate a deeper ethical understanding? How do we make choices that are not just convenient or loud, but truly virtuous and responsible for ourselves and for the society we're part of?
Definitely something to mull over until our next deep dive.